here's what makes this Tennessee basketball team different from any other Rick Barnes team or any other Tennessee basketball team that has fallen short in the NCAA basketball tournament. They're multiple. They can beat you in a variety of ways. They can score with one player. If you want to give him extra attention, double Dalton Knecht up. He can kick it out. He can find other players to score. They can score at a high level. They did so at Kentucky on the road, scored nearly 100 points. They can also score in the 60s and beat you with defense because it's still Rick Barnes. Caleb, this team is different in so many ways compared, and we're going to keep discussing them, but your thoughts on the message board is so different than so many of the Barnes and Tennessee teams that have fallen short in the past.
You're 1,000% correct. You're 1,000% correct. And we can just go these 3 games alone. Okay, against Auburn, Bruce Pearl plays tempo, runs the flex offense, and does his standard press. And Tennessee is able to go right with him and win 92-84. Saturday, similar style. Nate Oates likes to run tempo, score a lot in transition. Tennessee was able to get back in transition most of the time. They win 81-74 with that. It was an 81-74 game, but if you watched it, it was actually a defensive win more than offense. At South Carolina on Wednesday, Lamont Paris, like I said, challenged offensively. What does he do? Slugfest, try to get the bigs in foul trouble. Tennessee wins that 66-59. Didn't really matter. And you brought this up when we talked about this in the morning before the show, and I didn't think about it until we got on, but you brought up the Bruce Pearl team that won the SEC in 2007, 2008. You're right, Dave. That Pearl team, they couldn't win if you slowed the game down and they had to score out of their half-court sets. Well, they could win, but they weren't going to beat the best teams when you did that. And you remember the Sweet 16 game against Louisville that year when Louisville had the Patino matchup zone that they run?
Oh, Lord, yes.
Tennessee couldn't do anything. They had no answer for it whatsoever. And that was the problem with that team. I think that
I can go all the way back to Southwest Missouri State, who played them a really tough defensive matchup, top of zone, Patino style. And I think Tennessee scored 46 points, 44 points.
Well, that was partially because Jerry Green just didn't bother to coach.
That's a given, isn't it? And I mean, okay, you don't even have to comma apposition that in there. Close comma.
Yes. Jerry Green was probably drinking before he was like, it's Alabama, Missouri State. Who are these guys? And
what time's the game? Do you remember when he showed up late for the game? He did. He showed up late for the game. I can tell you about that. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friend at Don Self. He supports the Vols. He's a State Farm agent right there in Chattanooga, the greater Chattanooga area. You can call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net. It's donself.net right below, and he'll take care of you. Customer service still matters. I know everybody wants the best prices, but what happens when you got that claim? That's donself.net. donself.net. Yeah, he thought that like the midweek games were regularly, they'd been like 9 o'clock tips for a couple of weeks in a row, and there was a 7 o'clock tip, and he got there about 30 minutes before the game started.
Wow. He stole money from Tennessee, didn't he?
I never was able to confirm this, but maybe Ron Slay can, that when the bus was leaving an away game, he asked to stop at a liquor store. I don't know that, but I've been told that. But can you imagine the Tennessee bus pulling in to a liquor store? It just goes to show you how different this basketball team is. Because while some of you may say Rick Barnes isn't a good postseason coach, and he's not, historically, he still has Tennessee in a position. I would rather have Rick Barnes right now. Then I'm going to make a weird comparison. See if you can follow me. UNLV was loaded. They had Jerry Tarkanian. I would rather have a Rick Barnes with a team like this than a lot of other coaches. I know you're saying, Dave, you're headed into March. What are you talking about? But my point is, from top to bottom, you have solid coaching. You have a deep bench that hopefully overcomes the fact that Rick Barnes can run his teams into the ground. And then you have a scorer that can do that. You can score in different ways. I just think from top to bottom, it is the past 3 games have changed my expectations. I'll be real frank with you. I thought probably Elite 8 get bounced. Wouldn't surprise me if they're Sweet 16 and disappointed everybody. I'm of the mindset now it's Final Four or bust. In Final Four, you don't know what shots are going to fall, Caleb. So you can win or lose in the Final Four and be the best team out of that group. But I think it's Final Four. I don't think there's any reason why Tennessee shouldn't make the Final Four this year.
You're correct. And last night was different about the difference with Barnes was last night, the win at South Carolina. I talked about this on my column, and we talked about it yesterday. We talked about it earlier in the week. Doing things like beating Auburn and then beating Alabama in the road, that's not new for Rick Barnes. He's beaten the number 1 team in the country before, Gonzaga. He's had Tennessee at number 1 for 3 weeks. And he had Texas at number 1 for quite a few weeks, I think, and it was in 2010. These are all things Rick Barnes has done. He's gone to a Final Four. He's won an SEC tournament title. Where Rick Barnes has always come up short is when he has to play a quality opponent. And when I say quality, I mean top 20 caliber to reach with a milestone on the line. So 2019, that team that was number 1 multiple times throughout the year, they were number 1 for 3 weeks. They play at LSU to clinch the SEC regular season title. They lose. They play Auburn to at least get a share of the SEC regular season title. They lose. They go play Auburn for the SEC tournament title. They lose. They go play Purdue for a chance to go to the Elite 8. They lose. Last night is the first time you can ever say Rick Barnes beat a quality team with something big on the line, which was the SEC regular season championship, and he held on to win. You guys can bring up the SEC tournament a couple of years ago. They beat Texas A&M in the championship game, and Texas A&M was a very bad team, one of those red hot teams that like the Georgia of 2008, and so that wasn't a quality team. The year Barnes went to the Final Four, he beat Michigan State to get to the Final Four. That's not the Michigan State you guys think. That was a 7-seed Michigan State that kind of backed into the Elite 8. They weren't that good of a team. This is what's different, and it's something that we talked about. Dave, I'll give you credit. You've been calling this from the beginning of the year. You're like, there's something different about this team. It was Dalton Knecht. But you said, you said this team has a go-to scorer, Dalton Knecht, but also Rick Barnes listened to us last year when we said he's way too focused on playing big. He needs to focus on shortening the lineup and not the rotation, but shortening the height of the lineup, playing a little faster, going more of a 4-guard set. And he did it, and that's where the effectiveness came in. And so his philosophy has changed, and it paid off for him last night in a way that it has, I can say this, it has never paid off for Rick Barnes in the history of his career before last night.
Interesting. We're represented by Banks and Jones. So how much did Caleb's expectations change over these past 3 games? I just told you I went from Sweet 16 or Elite 8 to Final Four. Sounds like Caleb's on Final Four. Was he there before these last 3 games represented by Banks and Jones? Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. So you think Tennessee's a Final Four team right now, as of March the 7th, or whenever somebody may be watching this?
I think they're a Final Four caliber team.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you think that before Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina?
I thought it was a possibility. I didn't think Rick Barnes was a Final Four caliber coach. And so I said, by the way, because everybody's going to call me out, yes, I picked South Carolina going into yesterday's game because everything I had ever seen Rick Barnes do up to yesterday, I had seen him do before.
You weren't the only one. There were a lot of people on Twitter like, I think there's still that battered ball syndrome thing that I hate. But you weren't the
battered Barnes syndrome.
Yeah. BBS, whatever that may be called.
Yes.
I just think this team is, I really think this team is beyond that.
I do too. And one of the big differences is I want to talk about what's unique about this team. Look, the COVID extra eligibility thing is making a difference, and we have to be honest about that. Tennessee, again, has 3 fifth-year players on this team right now. They have 2 third-year players in Adu and Zakai Ziegler. That's their starting lineup. That's a veteran team. That's a lot of experience. And that experience comes in and makes a huge difference in moments. I mean, you're watching Kentucky this year. They're finally figuring it out. They're playing really good basketball, and they're a dangerous team. But, Dave, you know this. You can try to build a powerhouse off one and dones, but that always gets you at some point in the tournament, because at some point the sloppy play of freshmen catches up with you.
Well, the sloppy play of freshmen, and then people used to say this about the Tennessee-Alabama game when they would say Tennessee should recruit more in-state players. I do think if you have a kid that comes from across the country, Knecht's the exception, that he's more likely to not care as much about the university and then when things get tough in clutch situations, I don't think there's that dig deep factor as well. Not with Knecht. I'm saying it can happen with other players.
Right. Well, where it's different from Knecht is with those other players. We're talking with Kentucky. We're talking players that they would have gone straight to the NBA if it wasn't for the one and done rule. Knecht needs a deep run in the tournament for his draft stock. He's that type of guy that, like, he needs to. What he's doing now is kind of like what Steph Curry did at Davidson. Is that fair to say? Where Steph Curry needed the NCAA tournament run to help his draft stock.
Yes, but I want to take it a step further. I think Steph Curry loved Davidson because they took a shot on him. I think Knecht loves Tennessee because they took a shot on him. I think there's a heart love for Tennessee that Knecht has. I don't think it's just a pragmatic, they can get me to the NBA pick number 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's to bring it to football real quick, because we talked about the Mannings earlier in the week. Do I think Peyton Manning went to Tennessee out of a business decision? Yes, that was a business decision, thinking about the NFL to commit to Tennessee. I think that he gave it his all for Tennessee, but I think it was a him-centric decision. I think Al Wilson just loved Tennessee, don't you?
Yes.
And just like he would have cut his right hand off to win that national championship.
But I think Peyton Manning coming back for his senior year loved Tennessee. I think Dalton Knecht, if the money, and if he had the other year of eligibility, which he doesn't, and if the NBA money wasn't so guaranteed, if it was more like the NFL, I think he would want to come back. I think he would want to spend another year at Tennessee.
Okay, here's the way, I guess, I'll get to Dalton Knecht, but I'll give the Manning-Wilson difference in a second, and then I'll go straight to Knecht in the way it applies.
Okay.
If you ask Peyton Manning, would he have rather won a Super Bowl or a national title? He's happy to have his Super Bowls. He wouldn't trade his Colts Super Bowl for a national title at Tennessee. Al Wilson was happier winning a national title at Tennessee. He would have chosen that over any Super Bowl he ever won in the NFL. Would Dalton Knecht rather get an NBA Finals champion, an NBA Finals MVP, or win a national championship with Tennessee this year?
You were going to go there. That's so tough. Obviously, if you come up from the school and you're Chris Lofton, let's say, for instance, and you weren't recruited by Kentucky and Tennessee gave you a chance to play in the SEC and you overcame testicular cancer and the fan base was still supportive of you when they didn't know what was going on and you weren't playing as well. Obviously, if you're Chris Lofton, you'd rather win a title for Tennessee than for the Detroit Pistons. But Knecht's a little bit more difficult. Would he rather win a title for, does he have a specific NBA team? Would Tennessee rank right up there as far as against his favorite team? That's a little bit more difficult. I mean, he's from Colorado. I guess that's fairly close to Utah. Is he a big Jazz fan? Maybe he wants
Denver, Colorado. He plays for the Nuggets with Jokic.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Gonna get that. I've wanted to see an all-white starting lineup in the NBA one day, see if they could go somewhere. And I'm telling you, the Nuggets got it, man. Nuggets are going to do it.
Let's see. I don't think that's going to be the case.